If you were trapped in a basement and a mutated monster was hunting you down, what would you do? This creature won't stop until it makes you its prisoner, so I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the mother in Barbarian. This girl will soon regret she ever booked an Airbnb. Tess here has rented a house in the suburbs of Detroit so she can go to her job interview tomorrow and approaches the deposit box to enter the passcode, but when she opens it, she's surprised to find there's nothing inside. The owner was supposed to leave a key here, and when the girl tries to call them for help, it goes straight to voicemail. With nobody else in the neighborhood, she returns to her car, but suddenly notices that the lights in the house have turned on. There's someone inside, and she cautiously walks forward as this stranger Keith greets her. Tess asks him what he's doing here, and the man explains he rented the house on HomeAway. They've ended up booking the same property, and he invites her inside so they can sort this out, but neither of them know this place is hiding a dark secret. Fearing the worst, the girl agrees to wait and starts searching for a hotel as the man offers to make her a cup of tea. He's starting to creep her out, and Tess talks to a receptionist to find out if there are any rooms available, but that's when the man interrupts, revealing there's a medical convention in town. Every hotel is fully booked, and the girl is stranded with nowhere to sleep. Wanting to help her, Keith suggests she stay the night and call the landlord to get a refund, insisting she sleep in the only bedroom. The girl takes his offer and sets up her things, but that's when she notices a wallet on the dresser. Curious, she decides to check it out and finds Keith's ID inside. The girl doesn't feel safe alone with him in the house, and snaps a photo of the card before stepping out of the room to return it. Later, Tess gets out of the bathroom and finds the man sitting at the table with an unopened bottle of wine. He offers to pour her a drink while they wait for the laundry, but makes it clear he's got no bad intentions. The girl lets her guard down and decides to join him, revealing she's here for a job interview with a film director, and the two start hitting it off as they talk the night away. But this business trip is going to end in disaster. That night, Tess is startled awake when she hears a strange sound from outside and notices the door to her room is wide open. Going to investigate, she hears the man crying out in fear and realizes he's having a nightmare. The girl reaches out to comfort him, but then he wakes up screaming in terror. He demands to know what's going on, and Tess explains she was just trying to comfort him, but asks if he opened her door. The man insists he had nothing to do with it, and soon they'll discover they aren't the only people living here. Okay, this whole thing was a terrible idea. Tess here booked an Airbnb for a business meeting in Detroit, but for some reason, she decided to stay in one of the worst places humanly possible. This house is in the middle of an extremely rundown neighborhood called Brightmoor, which has lost nearly 40% of its population and has had high crime rates for decades. It's a very sketchy part of town, and she never should have booked this place to begin with. But there's another major detail here that she hasn't considered. If this is such an unattractive location to spend the night, it seems incredibly unlikely that it's been double booked with someone else, and that instantly makes the situation highly suspicious. If I were Tess here, I would have no choice but to consider that this man might not be an official customer of the property and has something to hide. It's also important to point out that when the woman arrived, there was no other car in the driveway, and this car here clearly belongs to the next door neighbor. For someone booking an Airbnb with no nearby public transportation, this is incredibly suspicious. With this in mind, it might not be a coincidence that we can't get in touch with a booking agent, and if there's any chance the man is a criminal, then we clearly shouldn't risk spending the night. For all we know, he might be the owner of the place and has been luring people here to kill them. It might sound paranoid, but ignoring these warning signs is exactly how you end up becoming someone's victim. And if we know anything about suburban Detroit, this wouldn't be the first time there's been a maniacal killer in the area, so taking this man at his word is a horrible idea. Now, unfortunately, the woman called other hotels and found out they were fully booked, so we don't have any other options than to stay here. That's why if it were me, I would spend the rest of the night trying to get in touch with the property manager to confirm his story and search for the address online to see who might own the house. In the meantime, the best thing we can do is take extra precautions by sending the picture of his ID card to our friends and family. Then we can let him know that we have his information, and if we don't get in touch with someone in 12 hours, the police will be alerted and he'll be caught. It might sound extreme, but the probability of a place in this neighborhood being double booked with no way to contact the agent is suspicious as hell. And since the man didn't even drive here, there's a good chance he's not who he's claiming to be. The next morning, the girl heads out to her job interview and finds a note left on the table wishing her good luck. It's a thoughtful message, and she heads outside, but finally gets a look at the neighborhood, seeing that all the nearby houses have been been trashed. No one's lived here for a long time, and the woman realizes how strange it is to have an Airbnb in this area. Arriving at a cafe, she meets with her interviewer to discuss the new job, and it goes well. But as they're finishing up, Tess mentions she's staying in Brightmoor. Confused, the interviewer insists that it's not a safe place to stay and warns her to be careful. It's clear there's something shady going on, but the woman promises to call her in the morning, and the girl heads back to the rental house, feeling nervous about spending another night here. Getting out of the car, she's about to go inside the house when a homeless man starts yelling at her, and she realizes he's heading straight for her. Acting quickly, Tess pulls the keys out of the deposit box and opens the door, rushing inside before the man can catch up. She manages to lock the entrance, but he won't stop yelling at her to get out. Terrified, she calls the cops, asking them to come quickly, but the operator reveals there are no police officers available. Tess is trapped here, and her only option is to wait for help. Calming herself down, the girl is about to use the toilet when she realizes they've run out of toilet paper. She heads down into the basement and picks up a roll, but as the girl is heading back upstairs, the door suddenly closes on her. It's somehow been locked shut, and to make matters worse, she doesn't have her phone or keys. The girl looks around for a tool she can use to escape, but that's when she finds something very strange. There's a rope sticking out of the wall, and Tess starts pulling on it, opening up a hidden door. Taking a look, the girl sees a pitch-dark hallway, and it's terrifying. Anything could be on the other side, but she comes up with a clever idea and drags out a mirror, using it to reflect light into the corridor. With no other way out, she decides to investigate the hallway and finds a door on the other end. Opening it, she turns on the lights and finds a video camera set up in the corner of a room, along with a dirty mattress and a bucket on the floor. It's a clear sign that something horrible happened here, and to make matters worse, there's a bloody handprint on the wall. Okay, this is going to be a problem. First of all, there was no reason for Tess here to walk through this doorway. It's very unlikely that it leads to another exit because the length of this corridor would clearly reach beyond the boundary of the land. This could clearly be a trap, and considering the woman has already been locked in by a closing door once today, she should have taken some precautions. If it were me and there was a good reason to walk into this hidden room, I would have placed a chair in the doorway to make sure it wouldn't trap me inside. Now the truth is, we already have good reason not to trust this place, but after finding a secret room with a camera and a bloodstained mattress, it's clear that our lives are in danger. Anyone with a brain would get out of this place immediately, and even if we don't have the keys or our phone, there's still a very simple solution that this girl isn't considering. If I was trapped inside a house with something this terrifying, I wouldn't give a flying about property damage, and the obvious solution here is to break this window so we can climb outside. From there, we can get back inside through the front windows to grab our phone and car keys before driving to the nearest police station to file a report. Waiting around is just going to make the situation more dangerous, because if there's any chance this place belongs to Keith and he returns, there's no way he would let us leave this house. Now, before putting this plan into motion, we should be thinking ahead and consider that it might be difficult to convince anyone of our story. It's also possible that if Keith returns and sees broken windows with no car in the driveway, he'll figure out we know something about the house and would have a chance to hide the evidence. We can't let this happen. And that's why the first thing I would do is look if there's a videotape or memory card in the camera. Having evidence we can take to the police gives our story a lot more credibility and helps protect us from any further consequences. Panicking, she runs out of there as fast as she can and looks for a way to escape when suddenly she spots Keith outside. Banging on the window, Tess begs him to let her out, and together they push the window pane down. Now that she's free, the girl explains what she found downstairs and insists they need to leave, but he doesn't believe her. She won't stay here any longer, and Keith stops the girl, insisting there's nothing to be afraid of. But seeing how serious she is, he decides to check out the secret room himself. Tess agrees to stay, afraid he might get locked downstairs, and he heads to the basement, leaving the girl alone. Worried, she walks over to the staircase and asks if he's seen the room yet. The man confirms it, but then he suddenly goes quiet. Something must have happened to him, and she walks downstairs, finding no sign of Keith anywhere. He's disappeared, and now she's the only person who can rescue him. Acting quickly, she blocks the door from closing and walks into the dark corridor, but when she finds the secret room, there's nobody inside. Tess continues further into the tunnel and notices a door that leads deeper underground. It's terrifying, and she calls out to Keith, hoping he'll respond when he suddenly begs for help. The girl knows there might be no turning back, but she decides to go down the stairs to rescue him. Reaching the bottom, she spots a metal gate that has been left open and follows the path, discovering metal cages with bowls inside. The girl is horrified and begs her friend to say something when a man suddenly rushes out of the darkness. It's Keith, and he reveals a terrifying secret. There's someone down here that bit him, and she insists they escape, but the man refuses to go back upstairs. Suddenly, a monster appears behind him and smashes his head against the wall until he dies. The girl is left to face the creature alone, and nobody is coming to help. Weeks later, this actor AJ is driving along the beach and enjoying time off when his secretary calls him with bad news. Someone has accused him of misconduct on a recent shoot and refuses to work with him unless he's taken off the project. The man is now being investigated, and to make matters worse, his accuser will go to the news to publish her accusation. Overwhelmed, AJ visits his accountant to figure out his legal situation, but it's not looking good. He'll be involved in multiple lawsuits that will leave him with only enough money to last 3 months. The man suggests he sells his houses in Detroit to make ends meet, and with no better options, he takes off to Michigan. Later, he visits the rental house and finds Tessa's car abandoned outside. The man has no idea what's going on and enters the building, looking around to inspect his property. It's clear someone has been living here, and he calls his manager, asking why someone else's belongings have been left in the house. The woman tells him that the last tenants rented the place several weeks ago, leaving him no clear answers about what's happened. Okay, this man is going to regret stepping foot inside this house. There's clearly a horrifying beast living deep in the basement, and it's only a matter of time before it claims its next victim. Now, as much of an idiot this guy is, it's impossible to deny that someone was staying at this house recently, and if all their stuff is still here, then it's clear something happened to them. It's not just toiletries these people have left behind, but entire suitcases and cars that have been abandoned. The man has no idea what to make of this, but if he was thinking clearly, there's a great way to figure out what's going on. First of all, he should obviously be asking the property manager the names of the people who made the last booking, and search for them on social media. If their last post was during their stay here, then it's undeniable that something bad has happened and he needs to call the cops. Secondly, it's important to point out that Tessa's car has been sitting outside of the house for weeks, and in an area like this, it's a miracle that it hasn't already been stolen or broken into. With this in mind, there's enough information here to figure out that if nobody has stolen the car after several weeks, literally all of their belongings are still inside, and his last guests never checked themselves out. It's fair to assume that there's something wrong with this place, and the locals know it. Now, the biggest problem is that he can't call the police because he might get arrested for traveling across state lines while under investigation. He also can't risk getting involved in the disappearance of a woman on his property, especially while he's already being accused of misconduct. But if he does nothing, it will eventually be discovered. The truth will come out that he took a flight to Detroit, and it will make him look even more guilty than he already does. That's why if it were me, the best option we have is to call the property manager, tell her the guests have disappeared, and have them file a police report for breaking policy. The benefit is that this is already standard practice if a guest damages property or breaks a policy agreement, and they wouldn't need to disclose anything in their report about AJ here crossing state lines. It would also require the manager to come investigate the house to account for the damages, and this would provide every excuse for the situation to be investigated without our involvement. The last thing we want to do in his position is to stick around and leave evidence we were here recently. That's why if we have good reason to believe that someone has been killed or kidnapped, we should be getting as far away from this place as humanly possible. The next morning, AJ makes himself some coffee and tries to figure out what's going on when he remembers that the basement door was left open. Whoever was here must be downstairs, and the man calls out hoping he'll get a response, but there's no answer. The lights won't turn on either, so the actor lies, threatening to shoot the intruder if they don't come up. When nothing happens, the man decides to take matters into his own hands and heads downstairs. He's only got a flashlight and a kitchen knife to defend himself with, but that's when he discovers the rope in the wall. AJ tugs on it, opening the hidden door, and decides to check out what's on the other side. He finds the secret room, and instead of calling the cops, the actor researches if it can be counted as an additional square meter of the house. He's only thinking about how much money he can make and goes back downstairs to measure the secret room, but notices that there's another staircase leading further underground. There's even more space than he had hoped for, and the actor continues measuring the second staircase, but that's when he notices a light in the distance. Confused, AJ goes to investigate and finds a room with a breastfeeding video playing on the TV. Suddenly, he feels feels something pull at his measuring tape, and the man lets go, watching it fly back into the darkness. Someone must be following him, and AJ quickly pulls out his flashlight to see who's there. That's when he hears a strange sucking sound, and quickly runs in the opposite direction, trying to escape whatever is chasing him. But as he's running, the man drops his flashlight. He's left in the darkness and tries to get it working again, but it won't stop malfunctioning, lighting up the tunnel until a monster appears right in front of him. The actor makes a break for it, terrified by the creature, and suddenly trips. He's fallen straight down into a hole, and as the man gets his bearings, he notices a grate close above his head. AJ can't believe what's just happened, but that's when Tess appears, insisting he stay quiet. Later, the girl bandages his wound, asking if anyone else knows where he is, but AJ ignores her. The man is still shocked by the monster, and the girl demands he calm down. She explains the creature they saw will freak out if they get upset and go on a rampage. Suddenly, the survivors hear a strange noise from above, and AJ points his flashlight at the ceiling, where he watches the monster hand over a baby bottle. It's creepy as hell, and the girl insists that he drink it, but he refuses. Okay, this guy is an idiot. He's trapped himself underground after a desperate attempt to jack up the sale price of his house. But if he was paying attention, there was every reason to realize that something terrible had happened down here. On his way through the tunnel, he saw cages that were clearly placed here to hold something as a prisoner. It's honestly all we should need to turn around and get the f out of this house. Instead, he kept measuring the place, and now we're stuck down here with a horrifying monster trying to force feed us milk. It's incredibly disturbing, but what's interesting is that as we saw earlier, there was a video teaching young mothers how to breastfeed their infants. This can't be a coincidence, and it likely means the monster wants to be a mom and has been looking for people to kidnap and raise as her children. As terrifying as this sounds, it's actually great news, because if we can assume this creature wants to take care of us, then it's not going to kill us as long as we play along. If we're thinking strategically, this swings the advantage in our favor, because as long as the monster wants to trust us, we can manipulate it into a false sense of security and wait for the perfect moment to escape. Now at this point, Tess has been trapped in these tunnels for several weeks and would know exactly what the creature's habits are throughout the day. Typically, mothers are encouraged to have very consistent feeding and sleeping schedules for their babies, and if this thing has been watching training videos down here, we can expect that it's going to take this advice seriously. That's why if it were me, I would ask Tess to confirm the best time in the creature's maternal scheduling to plan for an escape, and wait for it to leave. Then, we could lift the girl into the air so she can quietly try to open the grate. If you look here, you can see that this cage has enough room to stand up in, and is probably at least 8 to 10 feet deep. It's very likely the reason that Tess hasn't been able to leave since being trapped down here, and that means this is our best opportunity to escape. Now, it's worth considering that if the monster can fetch a bottle of milk within minutes of kidnapping her newest victim, we can assume it's always close by. If it wants to think of us as her children, then she's also going to be highly alert to any noises we're making, so executing this plan is going to be incredibly difficult. That's why if we manage to climb out of the hole, the first thing I would do is knock this woman to the ground. It sounds cold-blooded, and that's because it is, but as counterintuitive as it might sound, this is actually in her best interest. The creature is clearly attached to Tess here because she's been taking care of her for several weeks and is treating the woman like she's her own child. With this in mind, the monster's maternal instincts are going to kick in, and instead of running to chase us down, it's a lot more likely she's going to first make sure her baby isn't hurt. Not only does this give us more time to escape through the tunnels, but as long as one of us gets out of here alive, we'll be able to find some help. We could then drive to the nearest police station and report what we've seen, sending cops over to save the woman from her kidnapper. At this point, saving Tess's life is more important than worrying about being arrested for crossing state lines, and if throwing her under the bus is the best way to get the job done, then she can thank us later. With no other choice, the girl drinks from the bottle, and the creature offers the man to take a sip, as Tess explains that the monster wants them to act like babies. Suddenly, it jumps down into the hole and walks over to the girl, gently caressing her face. The survivors are terrified as the creature moves on to AJ and starts speaking gibberish to him, freaking the man out, but that was a mistake. The monster drags him away and out of the hole, leaving Tess all by herself. AJ is taken back into the TV room, where he's held down on a makeshift bed and screams for help. Meanwhile, Tess here climbs out of the pit and walks through the tunnel, finding the man being breastfed by the creature. It's disgusting, and she walks past them to leave, but trips on the measuring tape. The noise has alerted the monster, and the girl runs for her life, heading straight out of the basement. She tries to escape through the upstairs door, but discovers that it's been locked. Tess can't break through, and with no other options, the girl goes back downstairs, breaking open the window as the monster roars in anger. She manages to climb out and is pulled through the opening at the last second by a stranger. It's the same homeless man who tried warning her weeks ago, and he's about to take her away from the house, but Tess tells him they need to rescue AJ. The man can't believe she wants to go back in, and insists they head over to the water tower for safety. Frustrated, the girl begs him to call for help, but he doesn't have a phone and warns her the monster will be looking for the girl once it gets dark. The only way she'll be safe is if she leaves the man behind. Down in the basement, AJ realizes the creature isn't here anymore and searches for another exit, when he finds a rope and decides to follow it, hoping it will lead him back to the surface. Suddenly, he hears someone screaming for help and notices it's coming from behind. The monster could come back any minute now, and ignoring the sounds, AJ reaches the door at the end of the hallway. With no time to waste, he opens it and discovers a trashed room full of belongings. It's weird, but then he hears coughing and realizes a sick old man is living here too. The monster must have kept him prisoner, and AJ promises to call the cops once he escapes, but the stranger doesn't say anything. He only points at something across the room, and the actor moves a bedside table over, with no idea this guy is just as dangerous as the mother. Okay, this is disturbing. We've just found an old man who has clearly been living here for a very long time, but the most important detail is that he's got a bell. You might think that it's insignificant after what we've seen so far, but the truth is, this might be all we need to escape this place. Now, the old man looks like he's 75 years old, and it's possible he was the previous owner of the house before it was sold. There's also a strong chance that he was the one to dig these tunnels in the first place, and has been secretly surviving off of whatever they could steal above ground. The reason it matters is because if you're paying attention, you'd notice that the place does not look like it was designed by someone who just wants to be a mother. Earlier, we saw there was a room with a video camera and a dirty mattress, as well as a bloody handprint on the wall. There were also large cages with food bowls inside, and when you put this information together, it's very likely that this man was kidnapping people and killing them long before the mother monster was around. We should also consider the potential age difference of these two people, because if the female is this strong and fast, she would need to be younger than 50 years old at most. With this in mind, it's possible that he could have easily kidnapped a woman and used her to raise a child, and that this monster might actually be his own daughter. It's terrifying, but the great news is that we can use this to our advantage. This bell clearly tells us that he rings it to call for help, which means the creature cares for the man and tends to his every need. All the evidence suggests that she has a deep emotional attachment to him, and that's why if it were me, I would search the room for anything to fashion a weapon with, and ring the bell to lure the monster out of hiding. Once it shows up, I would then take the old man hostage so she won't be able to attack us without putting her father at risk. If the plan is working, we could then make our way through the tunnels until we reach the base of the stairs and push the old man towards her while we make our escape. From what we know about the woman, she'll likely prioritize his well-being over capturing us, and it will give us our best opportunity to break out of here without getting caught. Meanwhile, Tess leaves the neighborhood and heads to the nearest gas station, asking the cashier to call the police. When the cops arrive, she immediately approaches the car and explains what happened at the Airbnb, but the officer demands to see some identification. It's clear he doesn't believe her, but she demands he comes back to the house to rescue AJ. After some convincing, they return to the rental property, but there's a problem. The keys are locked inside, and the police won't break into the building without proof that she's staying there. Panicking, Tess reveals a man has already been killed, and they need to rescue the actor before it's too late. But the police officer has lost his patience. Without reasonable cause, he walks back to his car and the cops drive away, leaving the survivor alone to fend for herself. Down in the basement, AJ finds videotapes labeled with strange descriptions of women, and after he watches one, the actor realizes the sickly man is a vicious criminal. That night, Tess breaks into the house and heads inside to pick up her car keys. She has a plan to deal with the monster and gets back into her vehicle, determined to rescue the actor. The girl backs away, aiming her car straight at the building, when the creature suddenly barges out of the house and runs straight for Tess. Stepping on the accelerator, she rams the vehicle into the monster, pinning it against the wall of the house. The creature tries to break free, but it's too late. The mother stops moving, and the girl gets out of the broken car to find the actor. Heading down into the basement, the girl looks around and sees no sign of the man anywhere. That's when someone shoots her, and she collapses to the ground in shock as AJ realizes his mistake. Waking her up, they quickly leave the house, but on the way out, Tess notices something horrifying. The creature's body isn't there anymore, and that means it's still alive, but they have another problem. AJ lost his car keys inside the tunnel, and refuses to go back to fetch them. Without any vehicles to drive, the girl decides to take the homeless man's advice and heads to the water tower to hide until sunrise. Okay, this could all have been avoided. The survivors are now stuck outside with a mutant woman prowling around the neighborhood, and she won't stop until she finds them. It's terrifying. But if Tess had been more strategic with what she told the cops, she might not have ended up in this situation. It's important to point out that the police didn't believe her, because they thought she was a crazy addict who was squatting in the neighborhood. The woman looks disheveled and told them that she was held prisoner by someone who is still hunting her down. It sounds insane, and even though she was smart enough to not mention the monster or the tunnels, it was still the wrong approach. Instead, Tess here should have focused on getting herself as far away from here as possible to save herself. If the homeless man is correct, then we can expect that the monster is going to chase us down all night if she has to, so the only solution is to get out of its hunting grounds before we miss our chance. With this in mind, if I were Tess, I would do everything I could to get myself arrested, telling the cops that I was a crack addict who stole this car and broke into the house. They already assume she's not right in the head, and if we keep giving them every reason to put us in handcuffs, we'll get a free ride out of here. It might leave AJ to die in the tunnels, but that's a price I'm willing to pay for my immediate safety. And when they run a search on the license plate and the Airbnb booking number, they'll realize I was telling the truth about being kidnapped. Now, unfortunately, Tess has already lost her best chance at getting help, and she's now been shot at the stomach. If the girl doesn't make it to a hospital soon, then she's going to die. But the sad truth is, the actor shouldn't be trying to save her yet. It might sound cold-blooded, but AJ should press on her bullet wound, making sure the girl screams in pain. It's important to remember that the creature only wants them so she can treat them like her babies. And as a woman desperate to be a mother, she would do everything she can to protect them. If the plan works, then the monster would immediately track down the girl screaming, and AJ would then have the perfect opportunity to hide himself in one of the abandoned homes, waiting for the creature to take the girl back inside. This would then give him enough time to run out of the neighborhood, and once he knows it's safe, we can call the police to help the woman out. The survivors are terrified of being attacked, but that's when the homeless man finds them and leads the group to his hideout. He can't believe they managed to escape, and AJ demands to know what the monster is. The homeless man explains it's actually a crazy woman who's been living there for years, and AJ insists they need to get help right away, but the man suggests they wait until morning. They'll have time to call the cops tomorrow, but the girl asks him how he knows they're safe from the creature. Reassuring them, the stranger reveals he's never seen the monster come this far, and that's when it rushes out of the shadows. The crazed woman picks the man up, ripping his arm off, and brutally beats him to death as the others run for their lives. The survivors try to escape, but find their way blocked by a barbed wire fence. That's when AJ notices there's a staircase nearby, and climbs up the water tower with Tess following after him. She's barely keeping pace from all of her injuries, and to make matters worse, the monster is already catching up. The girl yells at the actor to take out his gun, hoping he can shoot the creature, but as the man pulls it out of his pants, he drops the revolver over the edge of the tower. AJ has lost their only weapon, and now they're stuck here with no way to escape. That's when the man realizes the monster is trying to take them back to its lair, and comes up with a cold-blooded idea. Grabbing a hold of Tess, he dares the monster to save its baby, and then throws the girl off the water tower. She goes flying through the air, and there's nothing she can do to save herself, but then the creature comes falling after her. Checking to make sure his plan worked, AJ spots their bodies on the ground and goes downstairs. He managed to survive, and the man picks up his gun as he approaches the girl to make sure they're dead, when he notices she's breathing. The actor can't believe it and starts apologizing for what he did, insisting he had no other choice. AJ pulls her back to her feet, but suddenly the monster stands up and grabs a hold of him. It won't show the actor any mercy and brutally kills him by shoving its fingers straight into his brain. With AJ dead, the creature checks on Tess and never notices the girl secretly grabbing the gun. The monster begs her to come back to the house, but the survivor